There's like hope and then there's like blind hope because I think blind hope sits with like doing what we've always done and expecting different results. And maybe it's not even different results, it's like an acknowledgement that it's a different time. Because it's a different time, how do we do
Right.
things differently? So that's like an opportunity to shift. But then, like, just in hope in general, first of all, I think it's good to have hope. We need to have like hope during this time,
Yes.
but it's not a strategy. What I meant by that or mean by that is how are you thinking really intentionally about what your future workforce looks, sounds, feels, operates like versus, well, I hope that we're learning some skills and then I hope they use the tools. I don't think we're like overtly as companies putting a new resource or training out there and saying it's our measure will be hope and was hope confirmed. But I think it's more the absence of like, what are we really trying to shift? How do we measure success around that? So I'll just use the example around training. I've seen a lot of companies do this and start with this, and in conversations that I've had with like friends at conferences is like the classic, let's put AI 101 class and we'll get it out there. That to me is like a hope strategy because you're like, all right, well, if they understand what it is, then they'll like go learn the skills and then they'll figure it out. It's well intended because we're like, oh, we could rapidly get that out there. But what is an opportunity to say, well, assume they know AI 101 or you can get that out there. What would you want them to do next? What's that sort of mindset shift that you're trying to build?
Carlee, it's really great to have you today. It's been awesome to meet you at a conference recently and just to be able to talk to you about how you think about learning workforce and especially how AI transformations are happening nowadays. So thanks for joining to share some of your thoughts.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to the conversation. You know, you mentioned me at a conference. I think that's like also the space that we're in, like connecting, learning, riffing together. And I know we're gonna do more of that today. So I'm super excited.
One of the things that struck out to me when we chatted last time was you described companies having like these AI strategies or implementation that are very much like implement and hope, right? Can you share a little bit more what you meant by that and why do you think that's happening so much?
I'm gonna expand. There's like hope and then there's like blind hope because I think blind
Okay.
hope sits with like the doing what we've always done and expecting different results. And maybe it's not even just different results, it's like an acknowledgement that it's a different time.
Right.
And so because it's a different time, how do we do things differently? So I think that's like an opportunity to shift, but then like just in hope in general. First of all, I think it's good to have hope. We need to have like hope during this time,
Yes.
but it's not a strategy. And so what I meant by that or mean by that is how are you thinking really intentionally about what your future workforce looks, sounds, feels, operates like? Versus, well, I hope that we're learning some skills and then I hope they use the tools. And I don't think we're like overtly as companies putting a new resource or training out there and saying it's our measure will be hope and was hope confirmed. But I think it's more the absence of like, what are we really trying to shift? How do we measure success around that? And so I'll just use the example around training. I've seen a lot of companies do this and start with this, and in conversations that I've had with like friends at conferences is like the classic, we'll do like an AI 101 class. Like, let's put an AI 101 class and we'll get it out there. That to me is like a hope strategy because you're like, all right, well, if they understand what it is, then they'll like go learn the skills and then they'll figure it out. And I think that it's well intended, right? Because we're like, oh, we could rapidly get that out there. But what is an opportunity to say, well, like, assume they know AI 101 or you can get that out there. What would you want them to do next? Okay, what's that sort of mindset shift that you're trying to build? How would you do that? So that's what I mean about hope. I think it's just like an absence of intention and an intention in a new environment, which means we're maybe doing things a little bit differently.
I can't agree more with that. I think one of the things I see a lot is that, a lot of AI stuff came from folks who are very technical in the software engineering field. I think people have definitely seen like very meaningful and dramatic productivity shifts. And then you're trying to copy paste that into like the business world. It just doesn't work because like the world of code is actually far more controlled. AI can really do end-to-end stuff and see real impact. Whereas in the world of business and sort of other functions, there's a lot of business logic, a lot of like alignment, unwritten stuff that like is floats around. And so just introducing tool doesn't actually lead to real like change.
No, and I also think it's part of where we've been. Like a tool could be a lot of things. It could be, let's just go with apps. Like that's a tool that solves a need. Maybe it's, I want to work on my language skills. So I'm going to download this app that gives me coaching and insight on how to do that. Or I want to learn how to cook more effectively. So I have an app that helps me curate recipes, give me skills, insights, etc. To your point, that's just not where we're at anymore. It's not just, okay, you as a whole entire company, everyone has this singular business issue, which they might, by the way. But how do that's old thinking. New thinking, how are you leveraging AI to your point around the end-to-end piece, and that singularly, I'm just going to pick something simple like a ChatGPT or a Claude. Like even that, yes, it's a resource, but it can solve end to end, right? You could use code to build something. You could use, here's my business case. What's the more effective way of doing this? And I'm just starting at a baseline, but to your point, it's end to end. It's not one thing. It's not contained into an app. And so how do we get out of tooling thinking or app thinking into systems thinking and behavior and skill sets to really capitalize on what this can be doing for our humanness and personness, but also our organizations when we're thinking about driving performance?
Yeah, let's double click a little bit more into what you mean by systems thinking. So what do you have in mind there? Like, can you give an example of what different type of transformation look like that isn't about just like tools?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's more holistic.
Maybe I'll start with an example, and then I wanted to share this like metaphor or like story that I've been kind of thinking about. Like I'll just use something like on our team. So I work in talent and leadership, and so we do a lot of focus groups, insights, like iterative design. In those sessions, we like talk to people like, hey, how does this product land for you? What else would you change? What do you love? I'm just keeping it simple. And in past, we'd take that feedback, we'd curate it. Now I work at a large organization, so we happen to have the resource to say, hey, can someone help us analyze this or have thoughts? But now when I talk about end-to-end thinking, my outcome is that I want to have really diverse and meaningful employee feedback to drive the effectiveness of this product that we're testing. Effectiveness of this product that we're testing, we're learning a new skill, just like going somewhere simple. What system can I build to collect feedback, curate feedback, prioritize feedback, create action items for me while I'm still building the tool and iterating between sessions to regularly provide value to the product I'm developing? So now I have a tool alongside of me that's automating my insights, my actions, my next steps, my product insights, whereas I'd either do that all manually throughout, or I would wait till the end and I would do it in stages. So that would be an example of like a system like solve, looking at what's the end state that I'm trying to get to and how am I backing out of a different solution. So that'd be like a work example, something that we've used internally because it's just the nature of our work. But the metaphor or story maybe I would share with you too is I talk a lot about or think a lot about, so my background's like athletics and sports, so I always go here. And I think about if you put yourself in like a large gym, there's like the front, when you walk into the gym, there's all the machines. This is like front of the gym. I'll call it like front of the gym mentality. It's machines. You have like one solution. I'm going to work on my biceps, like machine. I'm going to work on my quads, one machine. It's easy. It's consumable. It's approachable. It's one thing. Then there's the stuff that's in the back of the gym. I'll call it like back of the gym mentality. People like climbing on the walls. They're like doing jump rope. They're throwing medicine balls. It's more open. It's a system, right? You can go there, you work on holistic fitness. And by the way, you could do that just with one tool, like one band or one medicine ball. But the thinking is so different because you use the medicine ball, you pick up the ball. It's not a machine. You're not just using it in one direction, one solve. It's dynamic and open. And so where we're at right now, to answer your question too, of this like systems or singular thinking, it's not that singular, like the one product or solution is bad or it doesn't serve a purpose, one machine. But if you could get to the back of the gym and do holistic body work, there's more value to that. But what we're saying, you and I are talking about like, how do you get there? And I think that's things like encouraging people. It's like having that mentor or support person to show you how to use the back of the gym, pick up that medicine ball and use it in different ways. One is the business use case, but certainly there's the gym too. Like we want to be more open and system oriented.
I love that. Can you share how you're acting this out at the Hyatt? Like, what's an example you might be able to share on this gym thinking and like, how are you currently enabling AI in the organization? To the extent that you can share an example, I'd love to hear.
Sure. Yeah. Another example would be we're about to roll out a new performance process.
Yeah.
And like many organizations, we are making changes and we're evolving how we're thinking. But I'll call that maybe a little bit more front of the gym. Like there's a outcome that we're seeking. There's a process for that. Yet the back of the gym thinking or the systems thinking is how do we enable and equip people to really get to the root of what are we trying to do when we talk about a performance review, or as we call check-ins, which is how do I give Vince really specific feedback, insight on where he's performing, where he might have opportunity, where we can prioritize work moving forward. This is like a thing that we're all still working on, equipping managers to feel confident in that and to have the skills to deliver feedback and facilitate coaching conversations. While long-term, we're exploring how does the performance review and check-in process become more dynamic, more open, things like collecting feedback on the way, along the way, and curating that, right? We're looking at those things. But for right now, for this moment, what we're saying is we're using a chat GPT and asking ourselves a question of, could we build a GPT that helps managers as they prepare for that performance conversation? Like, how are they seeing their employee deliver on, over the past several months, deliver on their job? What are some of the competencies or ways that they're operating that they think that they're doing really well at, or they could help lean in on development? And so using a chat, which you could record, you could type in, and then to say within that tool, it's curating to say, hey, Vince, here are like the top things you might want to talk about. Here's how you might want to think about that coaching conversation. Here's how you could practice. You want to run some ideas by me. So essentially internally exploring and building that tool like within our own infrastructure. So why is that an example? Because we could go buy that off the shelf, but we've said, hey, like, let's experiment, like, let's see what we can learn and do right now, because we could do that over the next couple of months, and there's value to gain. To me, that's a little bit of that example of like systems thinking, because it's not saying I have to go buy the app, which, by the way, probably doesn't solve what we're doing because it hasn't existed in the past. I also don't have to buy the particular AI product right now, but I know that we have something internally that we could build ourselves. And that just wouldn't have been possible before. You would have needed, an engineer to build code to build that in. So that would be an example of something that we're doing now and exploring. But I think that's also a signal where we're at organizationally, which is how are we equipping locally for people to solve the business challenges that they're facing, and opening up the opportunity for the system thinking versus we assume everybody has the same problem and here's the app to do it.
I love that. Actually, one of the things that I think I'm hearing here is because now there's more things you can actually do and prototype yourself. You're
Exactly.
not like constrained by the availability of the tool set for the solution you can solve. So you can be a lot more problem oriented. Like in the past, you could be problem oriented, but sometimes you just run into issues of, well, the solutions that we came up with are just impossible for us to do. So like, what's the point? But now you can actually envision a solution, and like there are probably some way to very quickly prototype it in a way that you can then test it.
For sure. And that prototyping could be the product while it's like, or
Right.
it's like a prototyping is a product. And I think that's kind of
Exactly.
where we're at too. Like we're starting very small, like within the team, and then expand beyond the team and move from there. And I think that that's different too. It's really cool. And I just like self-admittedly, I mean, it's part of also the undoing and the new learning, which is it doesn't have to be perfect. Actually, in fact, I just had a call with someone yesterday. We talked about this. There's like a whole, if you've been working for some number of years, there is a great unlearn, which is get to the thing that looks good, is totally functional. And if you work, depending on your company, is scalable, we just don't have to do as much of that. You can learn on the way, along the way, and still have value in that.
Right, for sure. Actually, this is a good segue to thinking about what like leadership looks like today. I'm curious, like, what do you think are the traits that are really required today that actually wasn't that important 5 years ago? And how are you actively equipping your leaders at the Hyatt on those fronts?
I think two things that I've been seeing, and I'll add a third one, which is a little bit of a Hyatt uniqueness, but I think curiosity is a huge thing right now. Curiosity is about exploring and thinking about like, well, what if? Well, what's that? Have we tried that before? What don't I know today? Can I do that? Like we just got off of that. Like, can I roll this out right now? Being curious. And then I think community, building community, being part of community is another important leadership attribute, in the sense of I have a team. How am I building connected community? Because as we are become more in the system dynamic thinking, understanding connections and both the elevation and breakage of those things is huge. So in order to understand that, you have to have community. I think we also need community because we need support. Things are changing super quickly. There's a lot going on. People need each other. A third C, which is for Hyatt, for us, care is a huge part of who we are. So our mission is we care for people so they can be their best. And I think part of care right now is understanding also the needs of folks on our team. Like you might need something that's in terms of feeling confident about using tools or the skill sets that you're building. Yours might be different than the other person on my team. Leader is really understanding those differences and leaning into support is huge, because in a time spanning back out where there's like uncertainty, we're learning new things, we're unlearning things that no longer serve us. I think care is the wraparound, but to fold in like curiosity, building community, those three things I think can be huge differentiators.
Yeah. And, I think you had mentioned to me like the importance of like well-being, I think care, like ties to that. One of the things that I definitely see as friction points in this AI journey for most organizations that is taking a backseat and actually is having a real impact, right? Like, I don't know if you've seen these articles about 80% of the workforce actually actively resisting or sabotaging their organization's AI initiatives because they just don't think it's actually in their interest to do it. I'm curious, like, what have you seen as best practices to demonstrate care and like well-being when clearly AI is a disruptive technology, at minimum really impacting and changing different people's roles, at worst like people talk about massive displacements of jobs and so on. So how do you think about that?
I think it's a good question, and maybe I'll answer it from two perspectives. Certainly, from a Hyatt standpoint, well-being is one of our core values, and we really lean in there. And that's everything from, if you think about the hotels, like it's a very physical job, and how do you take care of what's the support that wraps around that? To things like, I'll go back to our performance reviews that we call check-ins. Care is also about creating that like safe space that someone feels like comfortable around, like receiving feedback. You start a conversation and checking in with them and how their day is, and here's how the dialogue will go. And by the way, it's not the same for everybody, but how are you thinking about what your employee needs? Like, are they typically more better off in the morning when they receive feedback and you have conversations? Is it more formal, informal, right? These are the things for us, examples of how are we encouraging, demonstrating how it can be done, and communicating those types of asks of our leaders and of our colleagues to facilitate that care. So that's like one way that we think about it. I think the other is, because you're also nesting in this AI world, we're in the people business and in the experience business. By the way, I think will be this like very interesting culture builder when people are needing connection and places to connect. Places like Hyatt will be those vehicles. So I think with that in mind, our AI strategy is rooted in care, which is like, how do we do things that both serve our customer to, one, facilitate those experiences, and two, for our employees, which is to say, how can we provide the tools and the capacity to get into AI, to use it, to make it applicable for your role. And so we've made a commitment to really do that over time, and to do it in a way that matters for our culture and ultimately our customers. And so we're not in a space where we're out sharing the message of like, hey, make sure you're getting rid of like 10 tasks today. Like, so I think that's how we show care, because it truly is about adding capacity and adding capability within the organization. Second way I'll answer this is, and I'd be curious your thoughts, like what I'm hearing from other people is, I'll just say, like, as being in the HR community, what can we be doing that's different to create a better environment around fear? So I'll just use something simple that I think a lot of us see here and oftentimes experience, which is that AI is driving efficiency and therefore we need less jobs. In HR, maybe we can come to the table and say like, well, instead of saying it's to lose the company benefits because you're saving us a lot of money, so let's take away those tasks, why aren't we looking at sort of like a financial model and saying, all right, if we move these tasks out of the organization, saves us $1 million, why aren't we giving other people like 100,000 of that? So a total different question around the strategy of what you're trying to do. And then instead of losing jobs, are you thinking about opportunity to redeploy, to continue to innovate and add value for your customers? So these are just questions I've been thinking about, but I think it starts to open up a different way of approaching not just what is everyone trying to solve, but to the very root of your question, which is there is a lot of fear, and how do we address that? And I think we have to signal and invest in different ways of moving us all forward.
I think the thing you mentioned at the end, I think is like a really interesting point. Efficiency is the obvious implication as a first order to answer the pressure, market pressure to show ROI for AI investment.
Yes.
It's measurable. It's like easy. So a lot of companies are like doing it because they are already under a lot of pressure to AI ROI, and in fact have not been able to show the gains they can see. So I think you and I discussed last time, some of the companies are just like cutting jobs and like framing it as an AI thing, so they get actually some like brownie points from the market, but they haven't done anything fundamentally that different inside the organization. But I see it as a bit of a failure of a leadership imagination problem, to be honest. A lot of organizations have a really long backlog of innovations they just never got to. Like their product has been waning. Like they could be doing a lot more innovative stuff. They could be changing and shifting a lot more. That requires like capability and talent. And the issue is that that's a lot harder thing to figure out than just cutting heads. And so I do feel like leaders, and I think a lot of people function leaders naturally think about this because they are in charge of people. But coming together to talk about what is the innovation we can actually do, because if every company just competes on efficiency, you're all commoditizing yourselves. Like no one's winning actually in the medium term. So how do you like build long-term capability? Like how do you redeploy talent? Like what does that look like? I think like pushing the organization to figure out that strategy so you can articulate, hey, like here's a much more aspirational version of the company we're now going after because AI enables us, not just like we're just becoming leaner and leaner, because then you're just becoming mediocre.
Yes, and smaller.
Yeah, and smaller.
No, I'm with you. And I think the ROI example you brought up, the first question you asked me at the top of the conversation was, what is hope? I think that's hope.
Yeah.
I think that's like to commit to your board that you've introduced AI and therefore like you've added efficiencies yet you've done nothing. That's hope. That's a hope
Yeah.
strategy. But to where you're landing, I think how do you do it differently? Yes, it's hard work, but I think that that's the exciting work. And I think if organizations are willing to invest, I think that's where you dust off those like real innovative questions and say, what if we created a new market? What if we became the leader where we've been number 9? How can we think about it? And I think as HR practitioners, that's where I start to nerd out too, because I'm like, all right, yeah, let's blow up some old structures. Like, let's build some just new ways of operating and thinking. For those who are like, okay, like I don't know how to just start with a whiteboard. We also like see some of these models in play in other ways. Like let's use this whole like promise of like the skills marketplace and evolving jobs. By the way, I'm all in. I'm here for it. I like imagine like literally a marketplace where I've got my like skill sets and experiences and I'm moving in the organization. But we have similar industries. So like let's use consulting. You're on a bench for a different project that requires certain skills or experiences. What if you went with that kind of model to start to meet skills marketplace? Or I'm going to throw out like a random one, which is what if you treated it like a contract, like you're a professional sports sign on. Like you're like, I commit for 3 years and you're going to give me a bonus if I drive that innovation home. And also you're going to give me a secondary bonus if I like engage my team through the whole thing and we save the company X amount of dollars. These are the things that I think are really fun in rethinking the structure, the systems, or how we go about it, in addition to how we, use the term redeploy, like reskill, upskill, build skills, think of new skills that aren't having to apply. But this is the stuff I think is exciting. Yes, it's harder, but the value to that is immense.
Love that.
By the way, Vince, we know everybody always knows you can't win by cutting. Like we just like this is the movie that everybody has seen. We just like want to forget that because it's right in front of us. It's hard not to pick the thing that feels measurable and actionable.
It's just, and I think people like genuinely right now don't know how to set a long-term strategy. But this is what, to me, but this is a leadership failure. I think it's fine for companies to try to figure it out and like fine to acknowledge, hey, we're trying to figure this out. I do think you will never get to a perfect answer. You just don't. Like things are changing so much.
Yes.
But a good leader sets a vision that is aspirational, that they're going to put a stake in the ground and you will pivot and change as you need. But they do then paint a vision that they're going to aspire to. And it's not just constantly, we don't know, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that like leap of faith is what's needed in a lot of organizations. We're like, well, what is a much more ambitious version of yourself that you can be?
And I love it because I think you're demonstrating like curiosity in so many ways. Like, what's that bigger version of yourself that you could be? What's the one thing that we can just start with? What's the thing that we don't have to be perfect on, but we can take a step on? What can we learn along the way to continue to inform what success is? I think these are all ways to break down that maybe expectations we have of ourselves or our companies, and that everything has to be baked or perfect or feeling like it's like the thing, the only thing that will save us.
Yeah.
So much pressure. Nobody wants that pressure. We want not. Like, this is the time.
Exactly. You actually mentioned another thing, which is you said you serve on Baltimore's Workforce Development Board.
Correct. Yes.
How did you get involved in that? Why did you decide to get involved? And what have you learned so far on that?
So I just love career work. This is why I put myself in HR for my entire career. I'm like that friend in the friend group where everyone has like a thing. They're like, Carlee like knows careers. I used to live in Colorado. We have a group chat. And one day someone said, by the way, what are you guys all doing for work? Like, I have no idea what you're doing. And everyone's like, it's like not where I spend my time with you all. And I wrote in and I was like, I can tell you all your literal entire career paths, like when you moved, why you did those period changes. Because I just like passionate. We spend so much time at work, and I think that everyone should be able to enjoy what they're doing and feel like they bring value. So I just give that because why Workforce Development Board? It's a marriage between that passion and the city that I live in. I felt like at the time there's something I could contribute in workforce in the city of Baltimore, which is that just like the conversation we're having, like what are skills of the future? How people move in their careers? The city's asking that. And I think about that for our citizens or the people, Baltimoreans that live here. And I'm smiling because what I've learned is that, and this speaks to my curiosity, like there's a whole arm of workforce development work that like serves, that's funded from national government. Where do you do with the money? How do you help people do career readiness, interviewing, career fairs, etc. But what I didn't know was, or what I've been learning is the amount of nuance that comes with that. And so when I applied, our mayor literally just posted on an Instagram. I was like, I work in HR, I could do workforce. And I think, so this is the other part. So they were focused on hospitality. So I work at Hyatt, great play. If I didn't work at Hyatt, they weren't on hospitality. I don't know if I would have been the top candidate, even though I was like, I work in HR. So that's what I've been learning also is the difference between like, what is HR in an organization? What is workforce doing? But a lot of it, there are similarities. What are the needs of the future of the people in a city or in a workplace? What are the skills? How do you provide the avenues to build the skills? And how do you keep people enabled and equipped to stay market ready? So that's what inspired me. That's the journey, but also what I'm learning too. But I think it's afforded an interesting also point of view, which is everybody's impacted by AI in different ways. And I think in our practice, I'll just call it people business. How do we keep being advocates for accessibility to tools, accessibility and opportunity to learn, to upskill, to train, and the opportunity to share, enable, remove barriers to job opportunities? Because everybody does want to contribute and be a part of something. And I think we're in a time where AI transformation is exciting. It's also a place where we can unintentionally be leaving people behind. So that has now become the evolved mission of why the Workforce Development Board.
Love that. And to your point, I think if you see the silver lining of the situation, which in some ways feels like very threatening and like disruptive, I think it actually makes this work feel more like a calling. There's a real like need to show leadership because as we've discussed all through today, the default choices being made by organization to maximize short-term results, it's not necessarily the right outcome for the long term. And I think you need to like create a movement with leaders who are committed to the long-term benefit of everyone to influence the strategies that organizations take. So like, I guess to that end, I'm curious, like, what's your recommendation or advice for people leaders in other enterprises that are thinking about this issue of how the AI transformation is playing out in their organization, worried about the implications of it and want to make a change or have an impact? Like, what can they do?
Maybe one thought, I'm going to pull this through. You asked me like sort of the leadership pieces and or what's important for leaders today. I mentioned like community and curiosity and care. And I think those maybe play out in part of the answer here. And so one is if you're looking to contribute, what I think pull on that, be curious. Like, what are you worried about in your organization? What are you seeing around you that you think doesn't feel right, look right, or has a sense of success that you're looking for? And keep pulling on that. So for me, I mentioned one of the examples today around performance. I've been thinking, how do we continue to provide accessibility and support people in learning and getting coaching? I've then taken to say, what other companies are doing this? What vendors are providing solutions for this? What research is out there about it? Because I also don't want to just do something at scale, but not have it be quality. Like in solving for accessibility, am I actually bringing poor quality? I'm kind of riffing. I'm like sharing with you my thinking out loud to demonstrate what can leaders be doing. I think be curious about the problems that you're seeing and what you want to do to address it. Tap into your community. Who are the people that you work with? Who are the people that you can network with? Who are the people that you go to conferences with? And what are they doing? What are they exploring? What have they been seeing as solutions? And can you continue to be like thought partners, those types of things. And then I'm going to use the term care, which is also one, give yourself your self-care, which is you don't have to do it alone. You can go with others and sometimes it will take time and sometimes you'll find the solution the next day. But knowing that you are also caring, I think that starts to lead to the curiosity that builds your community that helps solve for the things you're facing in your organization. So maybe I'm just wrapping it back around on the leadership of the differentiators today. But I think in answering your question of what can people largely be doing, I think this is where you can begin. And maybe I'll end with that, which is just begin. And it's a theme that you and I have been talking about. It doesn't have to be perfect. But if you're just beginning, that's okay. And that's where you start to make change. And one day you'll look back and be like, oh, look at all the things we've done.
Yeah. I love that. Every organization has to have leaders who are worried about this and care about this topic, and for them to sort of be inspired by the conversation and start taking some action in their own capacity. That would be amazing. Carlee, thanks so much for joining today and sharing your thoughts. It's amazing that you're having impact on your organizational level with your friends, and then also at the city level. And I look forward to having more conversations like this in the future with you.
And I really appreciate you having me on. I think this is a very exciting time for those of us in the people space. It's a great time to make impact in places that we never imagined. So appreciate being able to give a little slice of that, to think out loud with you on it. Yeah, more to come.
Thank you.